Welcome to the Evolvepreneur AI Advantage Show, and I'm your host, Richard Wray. My mission is to help entrepreneurs understand AI and use it to their advantage. Join me today where we dig deep with our guests and get you the best concepts and strategies. Today's special guest is Craig Hurd. Over the last 12 years, Craig has helped companies with their client acquisition. In 2022, his company Apex Performance helped clients collectively generate $7.2 million in revenue. But he realized that to help his clients more, his company needed to do, not just teach. This led to the creation of AI-powered software to help clients grow their pipeline and scale in a way a human never could alone. He is also the author of the book, The Intelligent Advantage: How to Protect and Elevate Your Expertise Business in the Age of AI. Craig also believes we are witnessing the dawn of the golden age of AI. Today, we're talking about the intelligent advantage. Craig, welcome to the show.
Good morning, Richard. Yeah, thanks for having me. And what an intro. That was great. Thank you very much.
Oh, well, thank you. Well, Craig, I always like to ask my guests, where in the world are you?
I live, as you can probably tell by my slightly muddled accent, so I live in just outside Edinburgh in Scotland.
Beautiful part of the world.
Big time.
So let's dive straight in. Can you just give us a very quick overview of the sort of customers that you have or have had in the past?
Yeah, well, big time. Well, I think as you mentioned, the last 12 years, it's really varied from
Mhm,
large tech companies, like so Google, Facebook, work with those guys. But
mhm,
nowadays, I really tend to help the solopreneur companies or the companies that are really trying to build something fresh.
mhm,
Um, it's I think the big thing that changed for me was when I became a father just over 6 years ago, and the corporate world had kind of lost all its sheen and all its interest, and I really wanted to build something for myself. And in that season, I developed a lot of empathy for these smaller companies. And I thought, man, they're just not getting the same access to process, procedure, to operations, to all these things that help these larger businesses to do so well. And so I thought, well, maybe I could translate a lot of what I've learned in the last 12 years into smaller business. And so that's really where I've been putting the focus.
very interesting. So you had that moment in your life, and you mentioned a lot of this, and there's a lot of work-life balance references in your book as
Mm.
well. I had a chance to read through quite a bit of it over the
Oh,
weekend.
thank you.
So yeah, it's a very interesting book. I love some of the stuff that you've done there, especially the references to Teddy Roosevelt. I thought was very cool.
Mm. Mm.
So the process to create the AI software itself, you say 6 years ago, child comes along, you decide to start doing something different. How did you go about creating that AI software, and how difficult was it?
Yeah, what a great question. So I don't have a AI or tech background. I think they
Mhm,
call a non-technical founder is what they nickname it. And I think that gives myself a personal advantage to look at this through because I'm not AI first. I don't think AI should be part of every part of our lives forever, always. Um, I come from a background of helping a company or a person to become profitable and be as purpose driven as possible. Those have always been my priorities. When
mhm,
I started my company, it was a number of years back, and it was a coaching company. It was a training company. We did some consulting as well, and it was all about simplifying and demystifying client acquisition. It doesn't need to be this complicated process. It can really be quite a simple thing. Not easy, but it's simple. And so I started with that, and for a number of years we were having great success, and we probably still would, if we continued down that path. And as you mentioned in the intro, in our final year of running the business like that, we were able to help our clients produce $7.2 million in revenue for themselves, which was always the metric we tracked. Not
mhm.
because money is the most important thing, but when money works in the business, normally other things can happen, and above all, people can step back and become the fathers and the present husbands and wives and all the rest that they really want to do and live the life of purpose that they're shooting for. So that's always been the driving force. But what I found was there was an uncomfortable amount of clients that we had that weren't quite getting it. I think every business has that. There's some clients that just aren't getting the results that the average client get, and that always made me really uncomfortable. I think there's coaching businesses out there now that are really really fine with that, and I just wasn't. And so I thought, how do we help everybody? How do we make good on the promises to everybody? And so it was a game of closing that gap. And we did that. We spent an entire year improving the training, simplifying it, changing the format, introducing a community, getting rid of a lot of training, like anything that didn't matter, we just got rid of. And it improved things and it made things better for a lot of people. But there was still some that didn't quite get it or didn't weren't quite able to do it. And we noticed the consistent problem across the board, the bottleneck for most was in that lead generation piece. Like, how do I start new conversations with strangers? And what do I do from that point to get them to the stage where they'll jump on a call with me and maybe just buy my product or service? And we thought, that is the bottleneck here. When most companies, when they jump on a call with a stranger, normally it becomes a client because of the passion and their expertise. But it was the lead generation part that was the bottleneck. And so we thought, how can we solve that? And that coincided with this rise of AI. AI suddenly became commercially friendly. And so
Mhm.
ChatGPT came out, the world was talking about AI constantly. And at that point, I thought, maybe that is what we can use to bridge this gap. And so I met with, gosh, hundreds of software developers and people that could help translate what I could see in my head to reality. And we finally found some people that could help us with it. And the actual process, the technical build, gosh, they could tell you how easy or not it was. But from my end, it has just been an amazing process of going, this is what people need it to do. This is how it needs to operate. It needs to be simpler than that. It needs to work better
Mhm.
than that and all this rest. And it's been a lot of fun. And what it's now starting to do for people is to take the heavy lifting away from lead generation and these new conversations. So it's really opened up a whole lot for the people that we work with.
You describe yourself as non-technical.
Mm.
Would you say that brought something to the process? Because if you're not getting stuck in the weeds of, exactly how it's going to work, you can actually express exactly what
Mm.
you need to happen. Do you think that was an
Mhm.
advantage to the creation of the tool?
Yeah, I think it's my greatest advantage with it because there
Mhm.
are tools. There's so many AI tools available now. I think last week alone there was 1,000 new AI applications and softwares launched in the US, which is an ungodly amount.
It's
Um,
certainly a gold
but
rush.
yeah, it's completely a gold rush, and I think a lot of the people driving it are AI first. So they're going,
Mhm.
"How do I get AI?" Their ultimate question is, "I love AI. It's got enormous potential. How do we use it more? How can we get creative about its application?" And I think that's the wrong question. I think that's the equivalent of saying the cell phone is just launched or the internet is just launched. How do we use it in lots of different ways? And it creates a lot of innovation and it moves the technology forward and it's good ultimately for a lot of reasons, but it doesn't help the individual and the person who's non-technical and non-AI first. For them, they don't really care if AI is part of their life. Most people are pretty agnostic at this point. They're like, they either think it's the new Terminator and Skynet is about to launch, or they
Yeah.
think it's really exciting. But the application of it is really, really lacking at the moment because people are seeing, Mid-Journey creating these beautiful images, and they're seeing ChatGPT writing legal contracts in 13 seconds. And that's all really kind of sexy and exciting and like, wow, look what it can do. But
And
to
a
the
little
person
scary
running a
for some
business,
people as well.
yeah, well, big time. And I think a lot of at best, people are seeing it as this kind of creative novelty right now.
Mhm.
And they're going, what do I do with that? I don't need a legal contract. I don't need to be able to write a legal contract. I still use my doctor for diagnostics. It's
Yeah.
just the application is severely lacking, and people aren't understanding. Yeah, but what do I do with that? And so people are getting really distracted with it, I think. And there are still those, I think rightfully so, that have a healthy amount of fear about what it could bring.
Mhm.
Wiping out enormous amounts of jobs. It could, the Terminator future of creating something that we don't understand and is far smarter than us, I think is a reasonable thing to be fearful of with any new technology. Um, are we doing the right thing at something we don't yet understand? So I think coming back to your question, the non-technical
Mhm.
background, what it gives me is a kind of unemotional, agnostic, as I say, feeling towards AI, where I go, if AI doesn't serve us, if I can't translate it into something that's going to help, then there's no need for it. Like we don't need it. It's
Yeah.
not that we've seen the opposite effect with the likes of cell phones, where everybody's everybody's got a cell phone in their pocket now, and they constantly look at it, and it's because it had that approach. It had that approach of how do we get more people using this more often. I don't think that's for the long term. I don't think that's the way to think about it at all.
So you're clearly bringing that front of house, that human element to this. You look at most businesses, especially with the history that you've got a training business. There has to be people who can interact, and then you've got the people in the background who can do the amazing technical things, and you're merging it all together, which is great.
Mm.
H- Have you found that there's been much resistance from any of your clients?
Interesting. Yeah, I think for our existing clients, we've found that they've got a lot of trust in what we've done because some of them we've been working with for years and years and years, and obviously getting them their best years and best months and really transforming their business. And so they're pretty open to what we say generally. I think for new clients, of course, we don't have that track record with the
Yeah.
individual. We can show them case studies for days, but they don't personally have that results track record with us. So they're naturally have more questions about it. And I think that's very reasonable. I think both with working with a new company and also working with a new technology. I can't even imagine what working with the internet or cell phones or any like that would have been like when it first launched. I kind of remember the launch of the cell phone. But what we find is we combat that, or rather we help clients with that by offering trials. We typically start with a
Mhm.
3-day trial of everything that we do, really just to help them see the potential of what we're doing.
So, what is the experience of your customers when they're using your software?
Great question. Yeah. So a lot of the heavy lifting of client acquisition nowadays for the solopreneur is opening up new conversations with strangers ultimately. So if you only exist, most solopreneurs, smaller businesses, even up to 10, 20 people, they tend to rely heavily on their existing clients. And so they will work off referral, they will network to some extent, but ultimately their circle stays quite small. And that is problematic because if you're not having new conversations with new individuals, it's unlikely that you're going to be able to grow at the rate most want to grow. And so that's always been the challenge. And so what we're able to do is use AI software to do a lot of the heavy lifting of that cold first impression, both through the likes of LinkedIn, integration with
Mhm.
LinkedIn, and also email as another platform as well. So we're able to have that kind of first handshake on somebody's behalf so that your experience as the business owner isn't speaking to a lot of strangers and almost, I guess, 10, 20 years ago, it would have been cold calling and
Mhm.
or cold DMing on LinkedIn 5 years ago. But now a lot of that heavy lifting can be done by AI, which is unbelievable. And so what they experience is an ever growing network and fellowship online of warm individuals, people that are open to talk to them, have already seen and heard from them. So think of it as that very kind of top of the funnel first interaction thing that
Mhm.
very few don't want to do. Um, don't want to do, don't like to do, don't have the time for any of that. AI is able to mimic at a high level the solopreneur or the business owner and sound and act like them and have that first handshake conversation with them. And so that it increases results and it takes away a lot of the heavy lifting.
So essentially, you create a clone of the solopreneur to make sure that it's got the right sort of voice, so it feels like at least at a very simple level, they have reached out to you rather than an AI.
Big time. Yeah. A simple way to understand it. And it also explains the power of AI here is say, for example, 5 years ago, you wanted to send, for simple numbers, 100 emails to 100 companies that you wanted to work with. It isn't a scalable exercise for you to write a tailored introduction every single time. Like that would either burn you out and it really wouldn't be a great use of your time. But on paper, you could see how if you did that, it would yield some results, if not great results. Five of those 100 come back to you and go, yeah, actually, this sounds interesting. 20 of those come back, whatever the number is, it's a fruitful exercise, but it demands a lot of your energy and it demands a lot of your time. What software alone has been able to do in the last, say, 5 years is to write one email or maybe a variant. So maybe three versions of the same email with, fill in the gap. So hey, Richard, notice this XYZ about your business. Maybe we could have a coffee, whatever it might be. Software has been able to do a bit of a mimic, a bit of a variant in what you say every time, but ultimately it always looks like a cold email written by a robot. What AI has the power to do is it has the ability to learn you as an individual, how you talk, what your professional background is, and almost create like a Jarvis, like an Iron Man Jarvis, and not send 100 emails with variation in three, but 100 completely different emails. Like as if you were a person sitting in your office writing a completely tailored introduction to 100 people in 100 different ways. That isn't scalable for a human to do. It's not a task anyone wants to do, but it is extremely effective. But AI doesn't have those emotions. It doesn't care about getting tired or breaking for lunch, and it doesn't have a mental load. So after email 75, when it's kind of really run out of things to say
Still
and be
feels
creative,
great. It's still getting on with the job.
it's still fine. It's still fine. And
Yeah.
so that initial handshake, that tailoring is only possible with the likes of AI. And that's a better experience for the potential client. That's a better experience for the business owner. And it's scalable in a way that just hasn't been possible.
Have any of the end customers, once they've received that initial contact and then ended up talking to the solopreneur, have they ever found out and had a kind of a negative response as a result of that?
It's a funny thing. I think the way I would think about it is the activity itself is going to be received well by some and not by
Hmm.
others, of course.
Yeah.
So some are going to be like, actually, what you do as a service is perfect timing. Thank you for your email. When can we speak? We're looking at this right now. That's the best possible scenario of
I don't care. It's what they
that
want.
particular
Let's get on with
strategy.
it.
Yeah. The most negative one is please don't email me. I've never heard from you. You know, that is a likely scenario in any client acquisition strategy, whether it be on
Yeah.
social media or cold calling or whatever method you talk about. That is the spectrum of outcome. What we find is the overall experience for the client is infinitely better. And that's ultimately what they care about more. So the first interaction they get isn't some out of the box email saying, "Hey, John, do you want to do this thing with me because of this reason?" It's a tailored thought, thought, thought out process. Well, I was going to say thought out, but I guess it's AI driven, right? So, uh, a tailored response, and overall, that improves the experience for everybody. What we find is there will still be some people that don't want to hear from you, and that is always going to be the case. The difference is their reaction, their negativity is then hit your AI. What operates as the kind of wall between you and them, so you don't take it personally. You know, it's never about you. So it's always about what's going on for the person in the moment, most likely. And then what's fascinating is the individuals who at some point discover that it was an AI interaction, and they go, most are impressed. They go, that's unbelievable. And so that becomes a conversation. So I think that it's important to realize the reality of doing it human driven is a negative experience for the solopreneur because they get all the rejection, and it's a negative experience for the potential client because they for most of them because they feel that they're not it's not tailored, it's out of the box. And what
Mhm.
AI is able to do at this stage anyway is able to improve that overall experience for both.
Understood. So, have you got any examples of where you've had an existing client, then have applied this new technology, and you've seen a really great step change in results for them?
Big time. So we have one one individual that comes to mind. Actually, there's a few stories that came to mind. Um, one of which, I mean, simply put, it's a uplift for all the clients that have been using it to date. Um, the big noticeable change is in how many new conversations they're having with people. The overall size of their network is increasing,
Mhm.
and the overall positive interactions that they are having is increasing. And for the potential clients on the other end, is they get a more tailored response, and they get a more personal message, which even if just for a moment gives them a better experience on their day than what we see on the likes of LinkedIn now, which is cold DMing
Mhm.
with no thought and long drawn out messages and just selling of
Oh,
services
they're
and just
terrible. They're absolutely awful.
Yeah, how many a day do you get now?
A fair few.
Yeah, exactly. So it's the end. What it means is the end of that and a more effective human human approach. Because ironically, a human approach. Because the reason those exist is because they're effective. But the big downside of it is it's cold, it's generic, it's clearly written by a machine,
Mhm.
and we're able to take that same effectiveness and actually make it a personal experience for that person. So even if they're not in a place or have zero interest in um in in working with you as a company, that is okay, because most are going to be in that position. Right now is not the perfect time, but for most people it's going to be an improved situation where they get a personal message and it's a better overall experience. We're trying to almost end that salesmanship that exists. I think put the final nail in the coffin for hustle culture and cold DMing and all these sales tactics that probably should have died in the 80s.
I would agree with you there.
Mm,
So, in your book, The Intelligent Advantage, you clearly express a belief in work life balance. Do you
mm,
see this as one of the potentially overlooked benefits of AI?
mhm. 100%. I would say I wrote an article on LinkedIn just a couple of weeks ago, which was the emergence of AI is the final nail in the coffin for hustle culture. I think for the last God knows how long, but at least 10 years, hustle culture and Gary Vaynerchuk and work to your eyes bleeds has been the narrative. And I think what we're now seeing is the death of that through the rise of mental health conversations and
Hmm.
work-life balance and the goal of being there and present for your kids. Like I know the responsibility I feel to be present and the desire I have to be present for my kids. That wasn't a conversation 30 years ago, even
Yeah.
that fathers went off to work and that was completely understandable. Now the expectation on modern men is to, yes, provide, but also to be present in a way that has never been there. And so I think it's a healthy conversation. And what it coincides with is AI and its ability to increase efficiency within for the person in the business so that that is actually possible. I think the missing gap has been for the last decade is the expectation has rose. So you as a father, you should be a great provider. You should also be present at home. And a lot of the men I work with and have worked with for years now go, like, what, you want me to do this thing that I've always done and you want me to be present? I want to do those things, but I don't understand how I'm supposed to do that. And a lot of the challenge has been for men personally is that pressure has increased. And I think that has brought about the mental health conversation and how are men doing overall. And I think that for a lot of men, more men than we still even talk about, is they go, not great. Like I'm under a lot of pressure a lot of the time. And I think the practicality and the solution to the problem has been lacking. So they've said, men, you need to do more. Um, we want you present at home. We want you also to provide, still do the stuff you were
Hmm.
doing before. Um, and they go, yeah, okay. But now we have this technology that actually provides a solution for that, where men can, if they integrate AI in the proper way, the appropriate way, not taking over the business, but just integration, they can take away not the most complicated tasks, not the stuff that they love doing, not the stuff that they are purpose built to do, but the mundane and the dull and the time consuming stuff that really takes their time and steals their hours away. I
Hmm.
talk to guys, especially a lot. I mean, men and women, but especially guys. I talk to them a lot about think of AI is not increasing your capability. Don't let it try and increase your capability. You're not going to become superhuman because of this new technology. What it can do at this stage is it can increase your capacity. So it can take what you're already doing and it can strip away how much you personally need to do. Think of it like Iron Man and Jarvis. Jarvis doesn't necessarily make Iron Man any smarter or Tony Stark any smarter. He just gives them the context, the time, the scalability that he doesn't have as an individual. So I think that's what AI has the ability to do today.
And any thoughts on how to avoid kind of the dark side of this? In that, there may be business owners or managers out there that think, now I can get my staff to do even more, but they'll
Mhm.
just work the same amount of hours, because there's a potential negative version of this.
I think so. I think that's real. Um, I think with any new technology, that's the case. I don't think it's a path that we're on because of AI. I would have said that's been there for a long, long time. The technology ultimately has
Mhm.
that goal of being more efficient, squeezing more from less. There's a couple of things I would ask the individual to consider. One is that AI is a force, like the internet was a force, like cell phones was a force. It's not a conversation of do you want to integrate it into your life. It's kind of here to stay. It's not a Bitcoin. It's
There's
not a
nothing you can do
crypto.
about it. It's here.
It's here. So the choice is at this early stage when we don't fully understand it's what it will look like. Just like in 1985, you couldn't have said what the internet was going to be. If you explained to somebody in 1985 what a LinkedIn was, they couldn't wrap their head around it,
No.
most probably. But the place that we're in now is a case of, well, can we move with it, and can you become more efficient as an individual, or are you going to be stagnant and be determined that you're going to wait this out until God knows when? That, I think, those are the first people to really lose the work. We always said that AI was going to come, and we always said that it was going to take blue collar jobs, and it's not done that at all. What it's done is it's really taken the place of white collar. It's taken the place of experts. It's taken the place of people that have trained 7 years to do what they do, 10 years what they do. And so that's who's vulnerable. But I would also say with that, it's highlighted for experts and for coaches and consultants, especially people that have an intelligence to themselves that they make money from. It's highlighted your true value. Your true value as an expert is not in the delivery of information. It's not telling someone this is how you lose 20 pounds, this is how you get financially free, or this is how you build a business. That's not your value. ChatGPT can do that for free right now. The value, though, is humans don't work based on information alone, because then we would be millionaires. We'd all be millionaires with six packs. What we also need is we need understanding, we need support, we need accountability, and we need guidance. Those things humans are incredible at. And so I don't think the expertise or the professional services industry is under threat. I think it's just going to shift who they are in the world. Those still exist, but they will be the coach, the consultant, they will be the guide, they'll be the
Mhm.
art, the Gandalf, and they will guide rather than just being the source of information on how to do stuff.
Makes complete sense. So I agree with you with your view regarding, we're on the verge of the golden age of AI. But what do you base that belief on?
I think that's a great question. Yeah, I think there is a time that people talk about where they talk about um, technology becoming far too abundant in our world, and I think that's a reasonable concern. The agricultural industry is a good example of that, where that has become far too much technology exists in a space that should be natural. And I think the overall movement of humanity is towards increasing technology at all costs. And so there is a future in which we've really got to stop and question, is technology and the ever increasing amount of it appropriate? But I don't think that day is today. I think what we're in now is this season where we're able to really allow technology to make our lives better. I think that's the short to medium term outcome that we're going to see, is those that jump on board and those that understand it and those look to understand it, they will really see the benefit. And I think AI has the ability to right now increase our capabilities, but it will have the ability to give us answers and give us better questions that we haven't thought to ask. And I think, yes, it's a very reasonable thing to be nervous about AI and technology. And I think that's a really healthy thing to have. I think that should continue always. Like, are we doing the right thing is a great question to ask. But companies should ask that. You should always ask that question. Are we on the right track? Maybe not. Maybe. So that's always a question. But I think this next season, we're going to see enormous abundance, enormous efficiency, enormous possibility. And I think we're a long way away from any dark future that anybody's concerned about. I think if you can be part of this shift now, you will experience the very best of it.
So embrace it. Don't be afraid. Take it on. Roll with it. Make use of it. Simple as that.
Big time. Big time. I think in the short term, that's got to be the way you think about it.
Absolutely. So, Craig, if there's one piece of advice that you wish you'd had when you were first starting out on AI that you'd like to pass on to all the listeners today, what would it be?
Mm, it's a really good question. I would say, and I've mentioned it before, but I would think of your world from your point of view. In other words, look at yourself, how you want to live your life, what you care about, what your passions are, how your family's doing, how your business is doing. Look at all those things first and start there. Start with, what do you want from your life? What do you want from your family's life? What do you want for your future? These are way more important questions. And I think once you start there, the third or fourth question down that rabbit hole is, how is my business doing? How can my business be doing better? And the answer, the fourth or fifth or sixth answer to it is, maybe this AI thing can integrate and improve on all things. But I would say the big mistake that I see a lot of people making right now is they're AI first. How do I get this thing to work within my business? But it's kind of like saying, how do you get the cell phone to be more important in your business? It just doesn't. Why would you want that? Start with yourself. Start with what you want for your life. Start with your family, start with what you care about, build the life you're looking to build. And then finally, when you're looking for a solution on efficiency and increasing your capability, then look to AI to go, where can this fit in? Not it fits in at all costs.
Great advice. Craig, where can people find you, and what's that big project you'd like people to look for in the not too distant future?
So a lot of people listening to this love podcasts. I love podcasts also. Our podcast is the Intelligent Advantage podcast. We have daily snippets where we create these short videos and short audio on really just slight edges that you can do to improve both your personal life and your business life, and how AI can provide some of those efficiencies and increase your capability. So you've got 10 minutes in the morning. The Intelligent Advantage podcast is a good place to go.
I'll certainly be signing up myself. Craig, thanks for a fantastic interview today. Really interesting stuff.
Thank you.
Well, that's a wrap on another awesome guest episode for the Evolvepreneur AI Advantage show. Just before you go, if you like this episode, we would be very grateful for a 5-star review. Please also consider recommending the show to a friend or two. Make sure you subscribe for future episodes at aiadvantage.show right now. Until next time, I'm Richard Wray, and if you're an entrepreneur, get the AI advantage today.